What's up, Dosers? My name's Jed. I work with the youth out at Palma Valley, and thanks so much for having me as we dive into God's Word together today. Do you remember when you were growing up and you had those friends in your life that they were just the best friends? You went to school, you hung out with them, you did everything with them, and then you scheduled some play dates. You had some time where you'd set aside and say, I'm going to come over to your house. And you had that one friend who you went over and they had some really cool things and they were so open and just loved to share their stuff with you. They had the best toys or the best games, and you'd go over there and they'd want to share it with you. And it was this understanding that their things were better when they were shared than they were held by themselves. But then you had those friends who maybe they weren't so open and sharing. Maybe you went to their house and they were a little bit more stingy, and you got there and you saw this toy that you didn't have and you were like, oh, that'd be so cool to play with. And they'd rush over and say, no, don't play with that one. And they'd reach in their bag and they'd pull out this toy and they'd say, hey, you can play with this one. You can play with this guy, all right? This is actually a toy from my childhood that my son has now destroyed. And they say, yeah, you can play with this guy, and he's got no legs, and his arm's super glued so it doesn't move anymore. And they're like, this is the one you can play with. And you kind of get this picture of selfishness at a young age of, man, this stuff is yours. The stuff in your house is your stuff to use. And I think this gives us a good framework, a good picture of what Peter's talking about in 1 Peter. He says in 1 Peter chapter 2, verse 12, keep your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evildoers, they may see your good deeds and glorify God on the day of visitation. See, I think it's this good picture of this world in which we live of selfishness. And our houses should be selfless. The things that we have should be for others, not for us. There's this picture that I love of this pastor. He gave this quote, and I'm sorry I don't remember who it was from, so I'm going to steal it without quoting him. But he gives this idea of, think of an apple tree. You have an apple tree, and the apple tree doesn't produce apples for itself. The apple tree is never going to pick up an apple off the ground or take an apple off its limb and say, I'm going to eat this apple for my nourishment. Its apples are for the person passing by. And in the same way, this is like us with our Christian walk, with what we do with our lives, with how our house is set up. Is it an inviting place to be? Is it somewhere where people come over and are welcomed and open, and they see that the way that you live in the grocery store, at your house, how you live in your workplace or in the car, does it all match up? Is it this place that they see and say, I want to be there. I want to share in that. This person is genuine and open and honest and willing to share what they have with me. Think of the fruits of the Spirit for a moment. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. These are spiritual fruits that are produced from the Spirit at work in us and what's changing in us. And when we think of that, those fruits aren't for us. In the same way, good works aren't for us. They're in fact for the people around us. They're what God is doing at work in us for those around us. And if we're not willing to share those with people, then we're not doing a good job of setting up our houses in a way that is inviting. Our spiritual houses, our temple, our body, if we're not willing to be sharing the things that God is doing in our life, then it's very easy to look and see the selfishness. But when there's a selfless person in the midst, in this world that is full of selfishness, of me first, of how can I get mine, the selfless person stands out. And in that moment, there's this authenticity that exists. There's this freedom of when you have conversations with people, they're willing to have authentic conversations about Jesus with you. If our lives don't match what we say or what we do on the weekend, it's very hard for people to be open and honest and authentic with us. It's very hard. And when we're the kid who says, no, you can play with Captain America, he's the best, it makes it really hard to share the good works. It makes it really hard to do what Peter's doing here and live an honorable life that says, no, this is what's going to point to God. This is what God's doing in my life. If we're not willing to do that in our lives, the challenge exists where they're not willing to have an authentic conversation about Jesus. So the question is, are you hoarding your good works for you, or are you willing to share them with others? Thanks, Dosers. Have a great day.
Thanks for joining us on the Daily Dose. We would love to be able to get you more content. Put in the comments below what other topics you'd like us to cover. Thanks for joining us. Remember, like and subscribe.